I am a sucker for a really good Easter egg. Not just the chocolatey goodness that you get in April, but I mean watching a movie and seeing a reference to a thing about another thing that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the thing that you're watching, but it's a good little thing to think about. And that's a lot of things. But this got me thinking, and with some help from a good friend of mine, Carl, I've come up with a really good idea to give you 5 of my favourite Superman references in other movies. Now, number 5 is the main reason why I kind of thought up this topic. I've recently just watched Venom. I know, being a movie YouTube channel, the fact that I've waited nearly 2 months to actually watch that movie, it's a bit of a tragedy, but I finally got around to seeing it, and it's not as bad as what a lot of people say, but we're not really here to talk about that. The main thing we're going to talk about is the very weird reference to Superman that is in that movie. It's not a spoiler in the slightest, so if you haven't seen it, it's not a problem. Now, at one point, Eddie Brock's just been in a big battle, and he's been picked up by his ex-girlfriend, Anne. Now, she's put him in the back of her car, and as she's driving along, she's discussing with Eddie Brock about this symbiote, this parasite that he's got, and what his weaknesses are. Now, he mentions that his weakness is sonic attacks, and this messes up the symbiote and he can't function properly. To which she responds, is that his kryptonite? Now, as we all know, kryptonite is the main weakness for Superman. It's kind of like an Achilles heel. It's an updated reference to the Achilles heel. But you can't reference someone's weakness being kryptonite and not have it mean that it's Superman's weakness. So this is an obvious reference to Superman. I don't think they're suddenly going to throw Superman into the sequel to Venom, because obviously they can't. It's a Sony Marvel movie, but they are referencing slightly. They are clearly referencing a DC character, Superman, and I thought that was strange. Number 4 is I Am Legend. Now, this is one of my favourite films of all time. It's a really good movie. The ending's a bit strange, but they did do alternate endings. The other one was actually a lot better, but that's, again, not what we're here to talk about. We are talking about when the main character, played by Will Smith, is walking down, I believe it's Times Square, and at one point the camera pans over his shoulder, and you can see in the background a poster for a Batman v Superman movie. It is the Batman logo with the Superman logo imposed over the top. Now, as we know, about 2 years ago, Batman v Superman did come out, but this movie is from 2009. That is a long time ago. Now, the reason this is in there is because this I Am Legend is owned by Warner Brothers. It's a Warner Brothers movie, and the director at the time, he'd actually previously written an early kind of script for a Batman v Superman movie somewhere in the early 2000s. He went on to write and direct I Am Legend, and it's he just kind of threw it in there as a little joke, a little inside Easter egg, if you will. So it wasn't anything at the time, it was just kind of a funny inside joke. But seeing that, it really is like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's funny to see in a movie from such a long time ago. Number 3 is from, shamefully, one of my favourite movies of all time. It is Batman and Robin. Now, before you start sounding off in the comments, I think I've mentioned it a few times before in some videos and even on my podcast. The reason I love Batman and Robin so much is it was the first live action Batman movie that I saw at the cinema. I was very young, I was very impressionable, and it was just so bright and technicolor, and just the fact that it had Batman in it, I fell in love with it. I know now what is wrong with that movie. I know now how bad that movie is, but it still holds a special place in my heart. But again, I'm not here to talk about that movie specifically. I'm here to talk about the Superman reference. Now, at one point, Batman and Robin are in the Batcave, and they're having a kind of argument about who should get to drive the car. Robin has been newly sort of entered into this world, and eventually he gets a motorcycle, but he wants to drive the car, and they're having a kind of a back and forth. And George Clooney's Batman, I'm not actually ashamed to say I actually quite like George Clooney, not necessarily as Batman, but his Bruce Wayne's quite good. But George Clooney's Batman turns around to Robin and says, this is why Superman works alone. So in that movie, in that universe, Superman does exist, but for whatever reason he doesn't turn up. Number 2 is the very first Spider-Man movie starring Tobey Maguire. Now you probably already know where this one is going if you've seen this movie already. At one point he's in his back garden, if you're English like me. Just a quick little edit that I realised I made a mistake during the recording. I said that Spider-Man was in his backyard. He wasn't. He was in the hospital with his Aunt May. I got it confused with an earlier scene, but mistake rectified. He's in his garden having a conversation with Aunt May about all the chores that he has to do, all the homework that he has to do, all the work that he has to do, and just how his life is really getting on top of him. It's not really an argument, it's just they're having a big conversation about it. And Aunt May actually turns around and says to him, you know, you can't do everything on your own. You're not Superman, you know. That is really weird, the fact that with the Venom one, you know, I kind of explained it with the whole kryptonite is the updated version of the Achilles heel. It's one of those things, you know, kryptonite is even a real element. It's on the elemental table. You can kind of give that one a bit of leeway, but this one, she references Superman specifically in a Marvel movie. Okay, it was Sony at the time, but a Marvel Spider-Man movie, one of the main characters references Superman, a DC character. I think it's very strange that at the time they managed to get away with that, but it's really interesting. It's actually quite funny that that is in there. Again, Superman is probably the most well-known comic book character of all time. It's just strange that it was referenced in a Marvel movie, especially a Spider-Man movie. Now, number 1 is my favourite because I have only just discovered this. During my little bit of research to find, you know, some of the best Superman references in all of movies and pop culture in reference, I stumbled across this one. It's very... It's hard to argue that it might not necessarily be a Superman reference, because you can argue that it's very hard to explain. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a picture up here of this reference. It is from some promo art for The Dark Knight Rises. It's the buildings with all the crumbling debris coming down, and it's been pointed out that there is quite definitively, but not, again, it's if you can see it or not. It's basically up to the viewer's discretion, but it eerily looks like a Superman logo. Now again, I'm going to put the picture up here. I gave you a little pause there just to have a little look at it. I can kind of see it, but again, you would not see it unless someone points it out to you. I've actually got it's a bit blurry, but it's a zoomed in version of this that I'm going to put up now. Now again, it's very hard. If I hadn't have pointed this out to you, you probably never would have noticed it, and it would not even be a thing. I liken it to, I reference this a lot. If you are watching a supernatural ghost hunting program, when they do the recordings, the EVP sessions, and they can hear voices. Now when you listen to it, you think, okay, that kind of sounds like a voice, it kind of sounds like words, and then the presenters, they say to you, we think it says this, and then they say the words, and then when you listen back to it, you can hear those words, but it's only because they've brought it to your attention. They kind of put that idea in your head. This is kind of what I feel like this picture is, but it's fun nonetheless. If it is, it's probably just Christopher Nolan throwing it in there just as a laugh, as a gag. There's probably nothing to do with Superman that was intended whatsoever. I mean, in this universe, Batman is human. He's human in all pop culture. I don't know why I said it like that, but this is a very realistic universe, you know, where there's no superpowers, there's no aliens or anything. So if it is the Superman logo, it is purely in there just for a goof. Like I say, this video is dedicated to my good friend Carl. He's one of my neighbours. He's a great young lad. He actually gave me some Superman egg cups, which kind of got the cogs whirring, and that's the reason I did this video. It's not my best video, but I've had fun researching all of these Easter eggs. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give me a like, maybe subscribe to my channel, or even throw a comment down below. Tell me if there is a lot that I didn't put on this list, but if there's any that I don't know, I'd love to hear about them. I do have a podcast. It is called Up and At Them, and it can be found on the Podbean app as well as Spotify. Thank you for watching.